welcome to PhDizzle. I'm your host, Alice Cheng, and today I will be interviewing Dr. David Schweitzer, who went to Penn State with me, got his BS in Labor Studies and Employment Relations, then went on to get his master's in Organizational Management at Misericordia University, and finally got his PhD from Marywood University in Human Development, and is currently a Director of Community Standards at Lycoming College. How did you go from labor and employment relations into your PhD? Actually, you did a master's in between. So kind of tell me about your academic journey.
Absolutely. So I think I was about midway through my time at Penn State, and I still did not have an understanding of what I wanted to do long term. So I picked something very general that I could apply to a variety of different positions or industries or fields like labor studies, that if I was one day managing people, it would be relevant. And so it was really through my experiences as a student at Penn State and even at Misericordia that I found my way to higher education. By the time I left Penn State, I was considering higher education, student affairs as a career path for myself, but I wasn't entirely sold on it. A graduate assistantship was available at Misericordia in Dallas, Pennsylvania, which was only, say, 45 minutes from my home. And it came with a tuition waiver to get a master's in management.
Oh, cool.
And I thought, okay, let me take this assistantship, which was in residence life and housing, student affairs, and see how I like it. And if by the end of the 2 years I don't, then at least I have a master's degree. And sure enough, within those 2 years, I fell in love with my work in student affairs, and I had found my career path. And wow. So really the doctorate that I pursued at Marywood, being in human development, was really the first degree of the three that I pursued intentionally, knowing what I wanted to do. And I knew how I wanted to leverage it.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, not many people get the opportunity to kind of figure it out in a master's with like a full scholarship. So that was it seemed like an incredible opportunity.
Yes.
So so after your master's, you actually started working full time, and then I guess did your PhD, did that happen right after? Or did you go to work and then decide you wanted to get your PhD?
Yeah, so I started working full time immediately after my master's degree was completed, and I was out of the classroom for 3 years, and it was during year 2 when I felt this itch to return.
What were you doing for work?
I had just gotten my position as Assistant Director of Student Conduct at the University of Scranton.
Okay.
And I knew Marywood, which was just next door to the University of Scranton, had a PhD program. And that position that I had just gotten in 2014 at Assistant Director of Student Conduct was really the first position that I held where I could see myself in it for 5+ years. And so knowing that if I was going to do the PhD at Marywood, that I would have to have some stability, I would have to be in a position that I could see myself in long term, I thought, hey, maybe I should do this now. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got from a colleague of mine from the University of Scranton was, if you're waiting for the perfect time to start a PhD, you're never going to do it. So I remember that, and I used that to my advantage, and I said, okay, it's really now or never. I think I should just do this and get it done. And that's when I started in fall of 2015. It took me 4 years, and at 31, I completed it.
So it took you 4 years, which is like, that's how long it usually takes people to do a PhD. So you just went straight through, did it full time, but you were also working full time.
Yes.
How was that experience?
It was stressful, but I have to say it was made easier mostly by the support structure I had around me. My family, my friends, the people at work who had been through it themselves, who I could just pop in their office and vent to at a little stuff like that went a long way in me going through the program as fast as I did. My first 3 years in the program was entirely coursework, 9 credits each semester, once again while working full time. It was a juggling act, but it was, and I also got a lot of support, I think, from the faculty at Marywood. It being a smaller school and a very small cohort, Really had that opportunity to develop strong relationships with your faculty, which really helped me out quite a bit.
Oh, that's awesome. So what did you actually study during your PhD?
So it was actually an interdisciplinary program. So a lot of the coursework jumped around quite a bit. Members of my cohort came from a variety of different industries, from business and education to healthcare. And the courses that were offered in that program reflected that. The ones that really resonated with me the most, I think, pertain more so to, psychology. And that's really what my research was rooted in. My dissertation examined the quality of life differences among college students based on their family structure. So if they originated from a family where their parents were married or otherwise known as intact, or if their parents had divorced. And the third independent variable or third group that my research consisted of was if the student's parents had divorced and at least one had remarried. A lot of the literature that compares students from intact families versus divorced families only do that simple comparison, not really taking that extra step to see what differences might exist if the student's parents had divorced, but then they, went on to remarry and maybe even experience the process of step family formation.
So what did you find? So do students do better when they're remarried, if they're divorced but remarried, or is it just like a wash?
That's a great question. So in addition to quality of life, the area within my study was parental conflict. So I was really trying to determine, is the family structure more significant in determining quality of life, or is the level of parental conflict going to determine that? Meaning that if a student comes from an intact family, but there's conflict all the time, is that going to bode well for having a high quality of life versus if they are from a divorced family where there isn't conflict? And so what I found was that parental conflict is actually had a much more significant relationship with quality of life than family structure alone.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yes.
It's like you're kind of like always stressed out when you go home.
And interestingly though, so the group with the highest level of parental conflict was students who came from intact families. And the lowest level of parental conflict were students who were in the divorced and parents had remarried group. And so
interesting.
I think it makes a little sense though, because say if the parents' first marriage didn't work out and it was filled with conflict, then in their second partner that they chose to go on and remarry, maybe they've chosen a partner that is more compatible and the relationship is less likely to lead to that conflict. So it's a little intuitive, I think.
So when you talk about quality of life at school, is that like grades, just like happiness? Like how do you assess that?
Quality of life variable had 4 different dimensions: physical health, psychological well-being, social relationships, and environment. So it really, I think I talked earlier about how my program was interdisciplinary, and the variable in a way was interdisciplinary, covering a variety of dimensions of one's life and assessing the quality of it.
So I'm going to pause there. So I understand your research. Now I want to understand your role, and then I want to try and tie them together. So you are director of student conduct. Tell me what that entails. Like, what do you do day to day? What are you in charge of?
Yeah, great question. I meet with mostly my role consists of meeting with students individually to talk about violations of our college's code of student conduct. Most of the violations that I see pertain to alcohol and drugs, which is not very surprising when you consider what happens on most college campuses. But when students come in, we talk about the violation or the incident that would have prompted them to have to come to meet with me. But I also use it as an opportunity to get to know the student. Many times, behavior is symptomatic of a larger problem, something challenging that they're experiencing, and this is the way that's manifesting. And I view it as part of my role to kind of get to the bottom of that and see what I can do, what the college can do to support them, retain them, help them be more successful. And it's not uncommon when I meet with students to hear about challenges that are happening at home, and that some of the issues that they're experiencing stem from family related challenges, and that follows them to college and leads to them maybe not dealing with them in the most positive ways, which lead them to meeting with me.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like a kind of like a depressing job. You're kind of like just disciplining students, but I guess there's maybe some sort of silver lining.
Yes, absolutely. I think the silver lining to what I do or what we do in student conduct is seeing the student learn and grow from their mistake. And especially if you work on a smaller campus, it's nice to see that growth take place and witness it when you see them in passing, or you see them move on to pursue leadership opportunities on campus and invest themselves in more positive ways within the community. That's, I think, what makes the work very rewarding. And every now and then in this line of work, it doesn't happen often, you might get a thank you email. And once again, it doesn't happen often, but once or twice is enough to really remind you of why you do what you do, and make some of the more stressful parts worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah. Let's tie it back then. And now your PhD research makes a lot of sense to me. So I guess you studied the family environment on the students' quality of life at school. And I think that sounds like you're transferring that knowledge into your work today in terms of just understanding their background. Do you think your PhD enabled you to be better at what you do?
Absolutely. I think that heading into the research, you have certain assumptions, and those assumptions are rooted in maybe the research that you do in the previous literature, right? You have your hypotheses, and that's rooted in whatever you review in advance of conducting your own research study. But some of those assumptions are also rooted in your own experience. And so when I was meeting with students day in and day out, and I come to learn the challenges that they face at home and different nuances about their families, that I think creates a set of assumptions. And so I think that by doing the research study that I did, it was a chance for me to test some of those assumptions, or really debunk some of them, if you will. And I think that, if anything, it also enhances my interest and my genuine interest and sincere interest in getting to know them and where they come from and their backgrounds. And I hope that also comes across in the interactions I have with them, and bodes well for me building trust and rapport, even though they might be here for a not so positive reason.
Yeah, yes, that's true. And you did choose to do the PhD on your own. And so it wasn't a requirement of your job. Right. Do you need a PhD to get into your line of work? Like eventually, do you need it? Or is it just kind of like like a nice to have? Like at some point, is there some sort of ceiling that, if you don't have one?
No, that's a great question. The answer to that is yes and no, in that with a master's degree alone, working in student affairs and higher education, you can advance, but only to a certain extent. And I think that shortly after I started working in the field, I realized that I wanted to continue to advance, but I didn't want to be held back by not having a doctorate. And if I wanted to reach a certain level, say to a level of a dean of students or even a vice president for student life, I would need a doctorate.
Okay.
And so I actually remember my very first week of class at Marywood University. We did this activity where the faculty members that we had for this one class had us place ourselves in one of 4 categories, and I'll try my best to remember them all. And it was based on what motivated you to start the PhD. And one was, I think, that you're just simply a lifelong learner and you love to learn. One was that you wanted respect that the degree will give you once it's achieved. The third one was that you're a researcher and there's a topic that you're so passionate about that this PhD is a mechanism for you to find more out about that. And then the fourth one was to just simply advance. And that was the category that I identified with that night. But I think like when you're doing the PhD, you go through different periods where it's all of those things.
Yes.
It doesn't remain just one through your whole experience.
Yeah.
And so,
I was wondering if there was like a wrong answer bucket where it was like, oh, I just want the respect, like, because that's like obviously something. But like, did anyone like go into that group where everyone was like, oh no, I'm just really passionate about a research topic? And they're like, nope, we're gonna kick you out now. Wrong answer. No, that's great. I mean, I think that's good to always kind of like stay one step ahead of your career, because then like your mentor said, when you're ready to do it, well, you'll never be ready to do it. So if you're waiting and eventually you'll just be kind of like those middle-aged, well, not that there's anything wrong with going back to school when you're middle-aged, but but it just gets harder. You have a family or you have other obligations and you're getting older, and maybe your memory is not as good. And so things, life happens. And so it's kind of good to just get out of the way. And it's smart of you to do that. And hopefully the hard work pays off. It seems like it already did. You already basically got a new job with kind of like a title bump, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So do you like your new work at Lycoming? And Lycoming is now, can you just tell me where that is?
Yeah, so Lycoming College is in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania, central PA, in the town of Williamsport, small city. We're a residential liberal arts college of about 1,250 undergraduate students.
So do you prefer working with undergrads, or is there like is there a distinction? Do graduate students have this sort of role for them?
Well, that's a great question. So
as a new mom, I'm always thinking about parenting, and my kid is like not very old at all, but everyone's always like, oh, just wait, they're cute now. And then when they're a teenager, it's like a hot mess. And so for the parents, maybe with teenagers out there that you're probably now seeing in their first year of college, do you have advice? Like, how are you dealing with this? And how are you, like you talk to these kids, it seems like they're just like open and honest with you, which is like not what happens with parents most of the time. So is it just that you're like this independent third party? You talked about resources. Like, what do you have as advice for parents out there?
I would just say, provide a proportionate amount of challenge yet support. Making sure that there's a constant, steady balance of the two, because I think issues arise, especially when the student goes to college, when there's, say, not enough support and too much challenge, or too much support, and when the challenge arises, they don't know how to meet it. So
I see. Okay.
So I think it's just knowing that balance of challenge and support, and that allows them to develop the autonomy and the independence and the skills to navigate all the changes that I think college will bring, and manage the independence appropriately and responsibly. That's probably the best advice I could probably give.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'll take it. I'll refer back to this video in like 15 years when my son is a teenager, and we'll see how that plays out. So great. You did your PhD in 4 years while working full time. So you are probably ready to like party hard now. So tell me what you're doing in your spare time now that you have so much spare time because you're not doing a PhD anymore.
Yeah. So I'm an avid runner. I enjoy running races, 5Ks, 10Ks. Ever since I was, 15, 16, 17, running track and cross country in high school, it's always stuck with me. So it's something that I still do on a daily, weekly basis, and something that I just really enjoy. And other things that I really enjoy doing, most of them are active. They involve being outdoors in nature. Yeah, I love to, this might sound a little random, but I love to split wood. Like firewood.
I guess you've lived in places where that's like conducive to that sort of activity. So yeah.
Where I lived before moving to Williamsport, I had a wood stove in my house. And,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was a great.
What do you like about it? You just like.
Yeah, and so like a great day for me would be to cut down a tree and start splitting it up into pieces of firewood.
Oh my God. Yeah, you should come to my house because we definitely have wood that needs to just be chopped up into pieces.
Great. I'm there.
Yeah, just come. Yeah. Do you like combine the activities where like you run, but you also are splitting wood at the same time? Like it's like
I've done them in the same day. And then after that, that's when I have, that's when I party,
Have you done any marathons? Have you ever done a marathon?
No, I've actually never done a marathon. And actually, I would say, I think it would have been back in 2011, I remember training for a half, and I was running upwards of, say, I don't know, 9-10 miles in a single run. And I sustained an injury and I couldn't run for, say, 6 months.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
It was like the most miserable 6 months of my life. It was like I lost a portion of my identity. So I remember thinking to myself, I never want to overdo it so much where I would risk having that happen again.
Yeah.
So I've stayed under a certain limit or distance.
Okay.
So that I never sideline myself again.
And you also have a dog?
Yes, I do. I have a 2.5-year-old English Springer Spaniel named Summer.
Aw. And did you get him? Her. Did you get her like during the pandemic, I'm guessing?
No, actually just before. So it would have been October of 2019.
So to like celebrate your PhD?
Yeah, well, actually, this is kind of a sad story, but I had a golden retriever for close to 2 years that I rescued, and 3 days before my dissertation defense, he died.
Oh my God.
I know. Yeah.
That's awful.
A lot of times when I think about my dissertation defense, I think of Max.
Sorry, it's like sad and funny. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's just like like so like that's crazy.
Yeah. And so like looking back on it, it reinforces how much of like a challenge I think like how life can get in the way at the very last moment whenever you're pursuing a PhD.
Yeah.
But you push through it. I had my defense scheduled 3 days later and I still did it. And,
good for you.
Yeah, very stressful. But anyway, I got her shortly after he passed away. Almost a way to cope, with the loss. And she's great.
That's good.
Love having her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then I guess to celebrate your PhD, because I'm in the bucket of like having people respect me because I have a doctorate. So have you like changed all your checks and credit cards and like email signatures to have doctor, or like how far did you go?
Oh, all of those things. I even have DJS PhD as my license plate.
What?
I even have DJS as my license plate.
That's so funny. You got a vanity plate? Did you, how, I don't even know how that works. Like how far ahead do you have to order those things?
I think I would have ordered mine, say, in like the winter after I defended, and then it came within, I think, 6 weeks.
That's so funny. So do people at school actually call you Dr. Schweitzer?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
How's that feel?
Great. Yeah. I remember when it first started happening, back in like the fall of 2019, it felt surreal. I was like, I'll never get sick of this. But,
That's so funny.
It just became second nature. But
do you have a favorite Misericordia Creamery ice cream flavor from Penn State?
So I don't know what it's called. Oh, I think I do know what it's called. WPSX Coffee Break.
Wow, you have really good memory. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's
the radio station. Yeah.
The coffee ice cream with the chocolate chips in it.
Oh yeah, I wonder if that's still around. I bet it is. PhDizzle.
Having fun with smart people who do cool things.